Good morning, everybody. On the occasion of 50th anniversary of Rachana Sansad, we are quite happy to be present on dais and show some of the work that we have worked together upon as an example to the students as to what exactly landscape and architecture, when they come together, create. The fact that we are here for the 50th anniversary has a great significance. During last 50 years of Rachana Samsad's tenure, a lot has changed in the field of architecture as well, not just in architectural teaching, but also in the field of architecture in India and particularly in Mumbai. And the change is not just visual, but it is also attitudinal, in the sense that the very fact that myself and Salil are sharing the dais today, that means an architect and landscape architect, 50 years ago was impossible. Even if I was called as a botanical engineer, it wouldn't have happened. So the fact that we are together on this dais for the 50th anniversary has a great significance. People have changed their attitude towards the buildings and also towards the environment, and thus this particular symbiotic relationship between architecture and landscape has been now accepted by all of us. And it's important that as students of architecture you should understand that landscape is not just drawing or putting your trees to decorate your site plan while submitting the design, nor is it, as everybody has said yesterday, to do the gap filling where architect has left alone, for somebody else to do. It's an integrated process of design, and I feel that's why we are presenting you a project that we have done together at Jamnagar.
Thank you, Kishore. Thank you, Rachana Sansad, for having us here. Thank you, everybody, for being here early this Saturday morning. The thing is actually, like Kishore very rightly mentioned, a difference in attitude with which, say, projects are put together. And you start with just a few slides of facts that we're going to all be faced with in our careers in the next 20-25 years. First of all, the fact that a century ago, less than 5% of the world's population lived in cities. And in 2008, for the first time in the history of humanity, this figure crossed 50%. So that's like a very significant. What happened there? Alright, sorry. In the last 2 decades alone, the urban population of the developing world has grown by an average of 3 million people per week. So, there are people who are trying to protect the city of Bombay and saying that there's so many families coming into Mumbai city every day from parts of the country that they're not very happy with. It's a little ridiculous and childish because this is happening all over the world. I mean, 3 million people are coming into cities across the world every week. By 2050, it would have been 70% of humanity that would be living in urban, conglomerations. There's 6.4 billion people across the planet. And most of this growth, of course, is taking place in developing countries. And Asia is going to hold 63% of this global urban population. Now, faced with figures like this, it's inescapable that, this kind of phenomena is something that we're going to have to deal with every day of our lives. One of the pressures that Vikas was trying to tell us about a little earlier, about this sort of growth of conserving parts of the older fabric and the pressure of trying to sort of increase is something that we're going to have to face with and figure out how to deal with this. There have been forums earlier that have been trying to ignore this as an issue, of saying that that we should, that we need to recycle and stuff like that. And I take what Vikas is saying, for example, but the thing is that how do you deal with this sort of mass? I mean, this is this humongous amount of new people who are going to keep coming into cities. And so therefore the city itself, when we're looking at it, is more often than not urban blight. I mean, you're trying to turn around and say, what are people doing? Obviously there are architects involved in this and builders involved in this, and decisions being taken. And your first glance at this is, I think we should just pull this down, and sort of rethink and relook at everything. And this is happening in every city that we go to, especially in India, across the board. I mean, anywhere, you go to hill stations and they've been completely sort of ruined. You go to urban centers, old urban parts of the city. It's just it's just sort of getting more and more sort of difficult to even visually look at. So it's just sort of getting worse, and this population. This is just sort of. I mean, you look at 3 million people coming in to cities every week. You can imagine what this is going to be a year from now, a decade from now. What we had this opportunity in Jamnagar 10, 12 years ago to make a township in the middle of fairly harsh terrain for what was going to be a very, very large petroleum refinery. And they actually had to house a whole bunch of new people in the middle of new people who are not locals to come and live in this new environment. It was like you were sort of creating like a town in places that were just generally agriculture or not even that. We had the opportunity to come together with a bunch of people from, it was obviously a corporate enterprise, and there had to be staff housing. And the pace of development had to be really fast, and it needed to be like a self-contained, sort of self-sufficient township in the middle of a fairly bland, harsh terrain. And this is sort of western Saurashtra, if you please. It has sort of very, very low rainfall. There are actually cyclones that are part of your one every decade, for example. It's a very bad earthquake zone. So it's generally very harsh for humanity to actually live there. So I think the biggest pressure was to really try and create, the big challenge of actually how do you get 10, 20,000 people to want to live and in an environment that can be created to be sustainable in a place like this. So these are pictures of some of the early, when the land was still.
You can also see the character of the site, basically scrubland, very unfertile soil, and there are certain runoffs because if it rains in torrents, and then perhaps the entire quota of monsoon is fulfilled within a couple of showers. That is the kind of terrain it is, and the atmosphere.
So the whole point, of course, and there was a decision that was taken very, very early on, where the site was still blank, and in a way, when all the drawing board was still blank, was that we need to obviously try and make this into a biosphere, in a sense that is going to start sustaining itself. So I mean, that was the first thing that we needed to put together. So yeah.
Yeah, therefore, the main problem was water, because how do you sustain? Greenery is all good, but greenery, if you leave it to the nature, will take a lot of time. And if you want to change the microclimate and the basic comfort level of the people, then how do you bring about the greenery? As far as the refinery was concerned, they had a very easy solution to desalinate water. But it was expensive, and they could afford it because, after all, by making the petroleum refinery, they could make good amount of money, so that desalinating water was quite affordable.